Hi, it's Katrina. For centuries, Egypt has captured our imaginations, constantly revealing secrets that challenge our understanding of the ancient world. Where was Cleopatra buried? What's hidden behind the most famous face in the world? And what do mummies smell like? Recently, scientists have been peeling back the layers of time and found discoveries that will surprise you. So hit that subscribe button and join me as we explore the magic and mystery of Egypt. The hunt for Cleopatra's tomb. Where in the world is Cleopatra? The quest for the resting place of one of the world's most famous and charismatic rulers is heating up. Scientists might be closer than ever to finding the burial of the last great Egyptian queen. And it's mostly thanks to one very dedicated woman with a knack for shoveling holes in the desert. Dr. Kathleen Martinez and her team have found a tunnel system under Taposiris Magna that could be hiding the most famous tomb in history. Cleopatra VII Philopator was arguably the most politically astute ruler of her time. She was a survivor, a diplomat, and spoke many languages. She was highly intelligent and charismatic and made the most powerful men fall in love with her. Historian Harold Bloom once called Cleopatra the world's first celebrity. Everyone all over the ancient world was obsessed with her, for good and for bad. Greek historian Plutarch described her as no supermodel, but her voice was so smooth it could charm the Romans right out of their togas. Her death is shrouded in mystery. The most famous account is that when she and Mark Antony were defeated by Octavian, Cleopatra was determined not to be humiliated and paraded through the streets of Rome as a defeated queen. She ordered her most trusted attendants to bring her a gift for the gods, a basket full of ripe figs. But hidden in the basket was an asp, a venomous Egyptian cobra and a symbol of royal power. She adorned herself in her finest royal robes and picked up the asp, which struck her in the chest. And so Cleopatra, the last pharaoh of Egypt, met her end in 30 BC. Historical accounts indicate that Octavian allowed Cleopatra to be buried alongside Mark Antony. The big question is where? The general assumption is that their shared tomb is somewhere in Alexandria. The problem is that most of ancient Alexandria is underwater thanks to earthquakes, rising seas. But there is hope. French underwater archaeologist Frank Gaudio has been mapping Alexandria's sunken ruins since 1992. Pulling up statues, sphinxes, and columns. However, still no queen. She could be down in the watery abyss, but Frank hasn't found her yet. Then there is Zahi Hawass, Egypt's most famous archaeologist and part-time Indiana Jones. In 2006, he and Dominican archaeologist Kathleen Martinez started digging at Taposiris Magna, a temple outside Alexandria. Dr. Martinez, a former lawyer, got into archaeology because of a heated argument with her dad about Cleopatra's reputation. She was determined to give her justice. Kathleen quit her career in law and became an archaeologist. Convinced that Cleopatra had the foresight to pick a secret resting place, Kathleen bombarded Hawass with over 100 emails. When that didn't work, she flew to Egypt and basically cornered him until he let her participate in the digs. Persistence level? Queen Cleopatra herself. And now the team might be close. Taposiris Magna has yielded several significant findings that suggest it could be the location of Cleopatra and Mark Antony's tomb. Taposiris Magna was a temple dedicated to Osiris, the god of the afterlife, and Isis, his sister and wife. Cleopatra was the embodiment of this goddess, and so Martinez thinks this would have been the perfect resting place for her. Martinez's team has uncovered various artifacts that have connections to the time of Cleopatra, including coins bearing her image, statues of the goddess Isis, gold jewelry, an entire cemetery with people who really wanted to be buried near someone important. But, most importantly, Dr. Martinez has found a 6.5-foot tall, 4,300-foot long tunnel, roughly 43 feet underground at the temple. The Egyptian Ministry of Tourism and Antiquities shared the find in a statement and described the tunnel as a geometric miracle. Martinez is continuing her quest to locate the ancient queen's long-lost tomb, and she thinks she's getting closer. She says that if there is 1% of a chance that the last queen of Egypt could be buried there, it is my duty to search for her. Revealing Nefertiti's face. Behold the face of Nefertiti, one of the greatest queens in human history. For over a century, an immaculate bust of Nefertiti has been hailed as one of the best masterpieces of ancient Egyptian art. It is so captivating that it earned Nefertiti the nickname the Beauty of the Nile. Nefertiti's beauty was legendary with her refined features, elegant neck, and striking bone structure. But is this bust accurate? It is over 3,300 years old after all. Thanks to modern technology, researchers can now take a look and see exactly what she looked like. The bust revealed a secret. Nefertiti may have had a bit of an ancient facelift. A CT scan performed by Dr. Alexander Huppertz and his team at Berlin's Imaging Science Institute showed that beneath the smooth, flawless stucco exterior is a very different face carved in limestone. The famous bust of Nefertiti was altered from an original bust showing a woman with a slightly different face. The real Nefertiti, or at least the one carved in the stone originally, had wrinkles around her mouth, less prominent cheekbones, and even a slight bump on her nose. But in the final stucco layer, an artist smoothed out those creases, adjusted the cheekbones, and erased the nose bump. An artist over 3,000 years ago gave Nefertiti the ancient equivalent of a Photoshop airbrush. I guess this proves that ancient beauty standards were just as ruthless then as they are now. Nefertiti's famous bust was discovered in 1912 by Egyptologist Ludwig Borchardt. It's been a star exhibit in Berlin ever since, but her presence in Germany has long been controversial. Egypt has repeatedly demanded its return, but the museum refuses, arguing that the bust is too fragile to travel. Whatever the reason, of course they don't want to give their best artifact back. Nefertiti was the wife of Pharaoh Akhenaten in the 14th century BC, and possibly a stepmother or even mother of King Tut. Dr. Alexander Huppertz suggested that Akhenaten himself may have ordered the alterations to ensure his wife met the ideal beauty standards of the time. In between changing the religion of Egypt, he wanted to make sure his wife looked good. No matter what time period or where you go in the world, practically all artists in any royal court did this, making royals look more attractive than they really were. And we even do it to ourselves now with filters. It's easy. Beauty standards are as old as civilization itself, but I think we can all agree that even after 3,300 years, Nefertiti is still beautiful. And now for a quick break because it's shout-out time! I want to give a big thank you to Gerard Cormigan for this super thanks. It really means a lot, and we wouldn't be here without you. Be sure to subscribe to join the Origins Explained family, because why not? What do mummies smell like? I never thought I would be talking about this ever. It's such a bizarre subject that you might not be able to stop thinking about it after this. Have you ever wondered what a mummy smells like? Everyone knows that ancient Egyptians took mummification very seriously, but what if I told you that their embalming process didn't just preserve bodies, but also left behind some seriously fancy fragrances? A new study led by researchers from University College London has revealed that mummified bodies smell kind of amazing. Using cutting-edge chemical analysis and a team of human sniffers, which apparently is a real job, scientists have discovered that mummies give off scents that are woody, spicy, and even sweet. If you were imagining an old, musty tomb smell, think again. Mummies were practically marinated in high-end perfumes. You could spray some on yourself to impress your date. When they say, "Wow, you smell awesome," you can say the secret is the mummy wrappings. The research team examined 9 mummies spanning from about 1500 BC to 400 AD. They used gas chromatography, mass spectrometry, and even an electronic nose to detect the specific chemicals producing these scents. Scientists found a rich, complex mixture of natural preservatives used to keep these bodies in pristine condition for the afterlife. Preservatives like natron salts, coniferous resins, gum resins, spices, flours, animal fats, waxes, and vegetable oils. Ancient Egyptians didn't just embalm their dead, they covered them in perfume. Smell was a big deal in ancient Egyptian culture. Good smells equaled purity and divinity. The gods were believed to have divine scents, so mummifying the dead with luxurious aromas was their way of ensuring a VIP entrance into the afterlife. One of the coolest parts of this research is its potential impact on museum experiences. Imagine walking into an exhibit and instead of just seeing a mummy, You can smell what ancient Egyptian embalming smelled like. This is exactly what researchers plan to do. The team hopes to recreate the scent of a mummified body and use it to enhance museum exhibitions. Now that would be an experience. Would you buy a bottle of ancient mummy perfume? The ancient Egyptian gold rush. Move over, California gold rush. Ancient Egypt had the original gold mining boom, and archaeologists just hit the jackpot. After 2 years of intense digging, Egypt's Ministry of Tourism and Antiquities has unearthed a massive ancient gold mining camp in the Saqqara Mountains, southwest of Marsa Alam. This is a no small-time operation. It's a complex gold factory from 3,000 years ago. Think of it as the Wall Street of the Eastern Desert, except with way more pickaxes and significantly fewer stockbrokers yelling into phones. According to Dr. Mohammed Ismail Khaled, Secretary General of the Supreme Council of Antiquities, ancient Egyptians had a whole system worked out for extracting gold from quartz veins. They crushed and ground the quartz, filtered the sediment in special basins, and then fired it up in clay furnaces to get that sweet, shiny gold. But wait, there's more! This wasn't just an industrial site, it was a fully functioning town. Excavations revealed workshops, ore processing areas, living quarters, temples, Ptolemaic-era baths, and administrative offices. No matter the century, somebody always had to be in charge of paperwork. Among the cooler discoveries were 628 ostraca. Ostraca are ancient sticky notes, fragments of pottery and stone with scribbled messages on them. The ones found at the gold mine feature writings in hieroglyphic, Demotic, and Greek. This mining camp was a linguistic melting pot, with ancient workers gossiping in 3 languages at once. No archaeological dig is complete without some ancient pocket change. Archaeologists also found bronze coins from the Ptolemaic dynasty, terracotta figurines, and even small stone sculptures of gods like Bastet and Harpocrates. Some of these sculptures were unfinished, meaning that some poor sculptor thousands of years ago got interrupted mid-project and never got back to it. But beyond all of these cool artifacts, why does the discovery of a mining camp matter to us today? Dr. Khaled said that Egypt was the gold capital of the ancient world. Discoveries like this one show just how rich Egypt was as the epicenter of luxury and wealth, even among the commoners. Why do you think Rome wanted it so bad? The forgotten, high-tech civilization of pre-Egypt. You know, the ancient Egyptians were incredible builders. They gave us the pyramids, the Sphinx, temples, and tunnels so massive they are hard to believe. But what if some of their greatest works weren't even built by them? For decades, mainstream historians have insisted that the dynastic Egyptians, meaning those who lived from 2500 to 1500 BC, used simple bronze tools and stone pounders to complete their masterpieces. They carved massive obelisks, statues, and temples out of granite, basalt, and quartzite, which are some of the hardest stones on Earth. How did an ancient civilization with no iron tools carve out these obelisks, precision-cut granite sarcophagi, and drill through solid rock with the skill of modern diamond-tipped tools? According to some researchers like Brian Forster, they didn't. These works could be evidence of a lost, highly advanced civilization that predated the pharaohs. Just to give you some context, Brian Forster is the author of 8 books and has appeared on Ancient Aliens 4 times. Let's start in Aswan, home to the infamous unfinished obelisk. It is a colossal chunk of pink granite that was abandoned mid-carving. Egyptologists claim that Queen Hatshepsut ordered its construction around 1478 BC. But there is just one problem. The obelisk weighs nearly 1,200 tons, which should have been impossible for the Egyptians to even conceive of moving. Plus, granite has a Mohs hardness level of 6 to 7, which means the dolerite pounders used by the Egyptians wouldn't have worked very well. It would be like trying to burrow through the floor of your prison cell with a wet sponge. Even if they somehow managed to carve granite with dolerite, how are they planning to lift the obelisk out of the pit? I'm talking about a stone here that weighs twice as much as the Statue of Liberty. Even today, with all our cranes and hydraulics, humans would struggle to move something this size. According to Brian Forster and Christopher Dunn, engineer and author of Lost Technologies of Ancient Egypt, the markings on the trench walls suggest that some kind of advanced tool was used to carve the rock, not primitive pounding stones. Christopher described the cut marks as horizontal striations that are typical in machining. In other words, the obelisks show signs of mechanical cutting, not manual chiseling. Now let's head downriver to the Serapeum at Saqqara. This underground network of tunnels contains massive granite boxes, some weighing up to 70 tons, which Egyptologists say were used as burial sarcophagi for Apis bulls. But bulls weigh about 3 tons, and these granite boxes are much, much bigger than the bulls. The argument is that these boxes are carved with a level of precision that rivals modern engineering. They are even more impressive than the sarcophagi used to bury pharaohs, and royal coffins were definitely not 70 tons. What were these boxes really used for? According to Dunn, the accuracy of the cuts at the Serapeum at Saqqara suggests that the creators used machine tools rather than chisels. He argued that no known technology from dynastic Egypt explains this level of precision. Now let's go to Karnak, Luxor. Karnak is one of Egypt's most famous temple complexes. It's also a place where archaeologists have found giant drill holes in solid granite. Some of the holes are so precise and deep that even modern engineers struggle to explain them. In the late 1800s, Sir William Flinders Petrie discovered granite core drill samples that showed a spiral groove. It was blatant evidence of high-speed drilling. The feed rate of one drill core suggests that ancient Egyptians were cutting granite 500 times faster than today's best diamond drills. Let that sink in for a minute. 500 times faster than modern tools? If the dynastic Egyptians weren't responsible for these precision-engineered artifacts, then it must have been an even earlier civilization. One possibility is that an advanced culture existed in Egypt thousands of years before the pharaohs, using highly sophisticated tools and technology. Some researchers even suggest that these ancient builders were wiped out by a cataclysmic event, like the flooding of Atlantis, leaving behind only the stone monuments that the Egyptians later repurposed. The Great Pyramid of Giza, for example, has long been suspected to be far older than mainstream archaeology suggests, perhaps even predating dynastic Egypt. The Great Pyramid could be more than 5,000, maybe even more than 10,000 years old. What do you think about that theory? Let me know in the comments. The Missing Pharaoh. A new discovery is shocking the world. Scientists found the first tomb belonging to a pharaoh since they dug up Tutankhamun's tomb in 1922. But that's only part of the story. There is another tomb that might hold even greater secrets. Move over, Indiana Jones. There is a new tomb raider in town. British archaeologist Piers Litherland and his team might have just hit the ancient Egyptian jackpot. A second tomb belonging to King Thutmose II. Apparently, one tomb just wasn't enough for this guy. How many graves does one king need? Litherland's latest find comes hot on the heels of his previous discovery. A tomb revealed over a century after Tutankhamun's tomb made headlines more than 100 years ago. But researchers didn't find much inside this tomb, just a few scraps of old paint. Litherland now believes that Thutmose II's real final resting place might be hidden under a 75-foot pile of limestone, ash, rubble, and mud plaster, which ancient Egyptians cleverly disguised to look like part of a mountain. That's some next-level camouflage. Here's the deal with the first tomb that was found and is still making headlines. Archaeologists think it was Thutmose's original tomb, which flooded just 6 years after he was buried. I guess ancient Egyptians didn't check the weather forecast. His wife and half-sister, Queen Hatshepsut, may have been the one who moved him. Maybe she was trying to keep him safe, or maybe she needed extra space for her own tomb. Either way, an inscription found near the first tomb hints that hubby was relocated to somewhere nearby in the Valley of the Kings. Now, Litherland and his team have their hands full. Digging this secondary tomb out by hand is their only option, since tunneling in was deemed too dangerous. So, while the rest of us complain about sitting too much, these guys are out there removing an entire mountain by hand. You gotta give them some respect for that. The first tomb they found had all the hallmarks of a royal burial. When they peeked inside, the decor screamed, "Pharaoh was here!" The ceiling was painted blue with yellow stars, something strictly reserved for the tombs of pharaohs. Litherland told the BBC he was overwhelmed by the discovery. He said, and I quote, "The emotion of getting into these things is just one of extraordinary bewilderment. I can't even imagine what it must be like to step foot in the tomb of a pharaoh for the first time in 3,500 years." For those who need a refresher, Thutmose II was best known as the husband of the legendary Queen Hatshepsut, one of Egypt's few female pharaohs who ruled in her own right. They also happened to be an ancestor of the famous King Tut. Considering Hatshepsut was Thutmose's sister, you get the gist that ruling Egypt ran in the family. Quite literally. I should mention one more thing because it's kind of a big deal. Thutmose II's mummy is currently being stored at the National Museum of Egyptian Civilization. It was found in the Deir el-Bahari cache above the mortuary temple of Hatshepsut in 1886. It was thought that someone removed it from the pharaoh's tomb for some unknown reason. However, with all this new and exciting action, Egyptologists are wondering if maybe they have the wrong body. Maybe Thutmose II's real mummy is in the new tomb that Litherland is currently digging up. Whatever happens, Origins Explained is here to keep you up to date on everything, so be sure to subscribe. Litherland is about to make a huge discovery at the bottom of the mountain of rubble once he finally gets there, and I, for one, cannot wait for another ancient mystery. The ultimate sarcophagus. Forget treasure chests, this is the kind of discovery archaeologists dream about. Deep beneath the sands of Saqqara, a team of researchers has uncovered a massive pink granite sarcophagus. You won't believe who it belonged to. This sarcophagus was found in its original burial chamber in pristine condition and covered in intricate hieroglyphs. Thanks to the hieroglyphs, we know exactly who the tomb belonged to. Imagine if all ancient tombs and megaliths had this information. The owner of this tomb was Ptah Mweya. Okay, I admit that Ptah Mweya isn't exactly a household name in 2025, but 3,300 years ago, he was a big deal. This guy was a high-ranking official who served as head of the treasury under the rule of Ramses the Great, and Ramses was maybe the best pharaoh of them all. Otherwise, they would call him Ramses the OK. Led by Professor Ola El-Agwizi from Cairo University, the excavation team didn't just stroll into the burial chamber like you might walk into an open cave. They had to dig through tons of sand and lower themselves 23 feet underground in a giant metal bucket. Now that's my kind of adventure. Once inside, they found the massive sarcophagus waiting for them, its inscriptions perfectly matching those on the tomb walls. Professor El-Agwizi explained that the hieroglyphs on the sarcophagus certify Ptah Mweya was a nobleman very close to the king. Ptah Mweya wasn't just some accountant, he was ancient Egypt's equivalent of a minister of finance. He had access to all the gold. But there is more to this discovery than just finding an old Egyptian miser. Finding a sarcophagus in its original tomb is incredibly rare in Saqqara, mostly because of tomb robbers. Robbers have had over 3,000 years to steal everything. It's actually a miracle there's anything left at all. Ancient looters had the same priorities as modern ones and pilfered most of Saqqara's tombs. Plus, have you ever heard of tomb recycling? Burial chambers were often reused over the centuries, leaving little of the original contents behind. When a tomb is found in Egypt, chances are it's had a half-dozen occupants since it was first carved. But somehow, Ptah Mweya's sarcophagus survived intact. And what a great stone box it is! The sarcophagus is a masterpiece of New Kingdom craftsmanship. Carved from pink granite, it features stunning engravings of gods, protective prayers, and intricate artwork. The sky goddess Nut is spread across the lid, her open wings symbolizing protection for the deceased. The 4 sons of Horus surround the sarcophagus, ensuring Ptah Mweya's safe passage to the afterlife. A finely detailed portrait of the man himself is carved into the surface, complete with a false beard because fashion was eternal. I don't know about you, but I'm feeling a little self-conscious about my ultimate resting place. Should I start preparing now? Do you think a boring wooden coffin is enough? Or do you want to be buried in the ultimate pharaonic style like our friend Ptah Mweya? A fearsome predator. Egypt is so much more than dusty blocks and amazing history. It's more than rich culture, ancient traditions, and puzzling megaliths. Egypt is also home to monsters. Archaeologists in Egypt have just unearthed the skull of a 30-million-year-old apex predator. And let me just say, you wouldn't have wanted to meet this thing in a dark prehistoric alley. Meet Bastetodon. a fearsome leopard-sized carnivore with razor-sharp teeth, a bone-crushing bite, and an appetite for pretty much anything that moved. Its diet included early elephants, hippos, and primates. I didn't realize that primates and hippos were part of the basic food groups. If you recognized its name, good on you. Bastetodon was named after the Egyptian goddess Bastet. She was the goddess of protection, pleasure, and good health, which is kind of ironic considering that this creature spent its life dismembering its prey. This isn't even the first time scientists named a prehistoric predator after an Egyptian deity. Another creature called Sekhmetops was named after the lion-headed goddess Sekhmet, the deity of war and wrath. That seems fitting considering Sekhmetops was a lion-sized, flesh-eating monster. Paleontologist Shourouk al-Ashkar was the leader of the group behind the discovery. He said that everyone was about to wrap up their work when suddenly, at the very last minute, a team member spotted something remarkable. He saw a set of large teeth sticking out of the ground. Rule number 1 of paleontology: when you see big teeth in the sand, you stop everything and start digging. What they uncovered was an almost complete skull belonging to an ancient predator called a hyenodonts, a group of carnivorous mammals that ruled African ecosystems after the extinction of the dinosaurs. And trust me, these things made modern lions look like house cats. Bastetodon was part of a long lineage of top-tier killers that once dominated Africa. Sekhmetops and Bastetodon are both part of the African hyenodont family. Bastetodon wasn't even the biggest of its kind. In 2019, scientists working with Dr. Matthew Borth discovered Simbakubwa kutokafrika, a hyenodont so big it dwarfed a polar bear. Today, lions and hyenas are the undisputed kings of the African savanna, but millions of years ago, hyenodonts like Bastetodon were the true rulers. Maybe scientists should bring these ferocious felines back to life instead of the woolly mammoth. Maybe both? What do you think? A pyramid opened for the first time. They expected a pharaoh's treasure, a glimpse into ancient glory. Instead, they found a crime scene. In the world of Egyptology, there is nothing quite like the thrill of opening a sealed ancient pyramid for the first time in thousands of years. It's the kind of moment that makes archaeologists giddy with excitement, but it's also the kind of thing that doesn't really happen these days. Most pyramids have already been explored and looted. So, when a long-lost pyramid was discovered buried under the sands of Dashur, the excitement was through the roof. But what happened next left even the experts completely baffled. Dashur is an ancient royal necropolis famous for its pyramids, though only a few remain standing today. The rest are either collapsed, buried by sand, or lost to history. The new pyramid was first uncovered by quarry workers who stumbled upon finely cut blocks of limestone hidden beneath the desert. They immediately called in Egypt's Ministry of Tourism and Antiquities, and soon enough, a full-scale excavation was underway. British Egyptologist Dr. Chris Naunton was on the forefront of the excavation. He described the newly discovered site as looking like a lunar landscape, eerie, desolate, and very, very old. Thanks to Smithsonian Channel's documentary Mystery of the Lost Pyramid, the excavation was documented step by step. First, they discovered a staircase leading deep underground. Then they found a series of massive limestone blocks, placed there to protect the burial chamber. And then, the big moment. Egypt's Ministry of Antiquities gave the green light to open the pyramid for the first time in nearly 4,000 years. This was a big day for the world. A sealed pyramid chamber is rarer than finding a unicorn, so pretty rare. Using a lever system, the archaeologists lifted the capstone that had sealed the burial chamber for millennia, and everyone gasped. Archaeologists expected treasure. Instead, they found chaos. The burial chamber was a complete mess. Artifacts overturned, remains scattered, and zero signs of treasure. An apparently sealed, unbreached buried chamber turned out to be a crime scene. It was apparent from the first glimpse inside that someone had gotten there first. But who and when? After careful analysis, researchers determined that the remains in the burial chamber belonged to an unknown Egyptian royal named Princess Hatshepsut, not to be confused with the more famous Pharaoh Hatshepsut. This was a different person in the 13th dynasty. Dr. Nansen and his team believe the pyramid was looted before it was sealed shut. Looters must have ransacked the burial chamber while the pyramid was still under construction. Once the damage was done, workers went ahead and sealed the tomb anyway, locking their crime inside. Nobody checked if the burial was intact. They simply slapped on the capstone and called it a day. Dr. Naughton describes it as the perfect crime. Archaeologists had the amazing pleasure of opening up what was basically a vault that had been robbed and then buried without anyone knowing. Were Egyptians black or white? It's time to settle one of history's most heated and controversial debates. What race were the ancient Egyptians? Were they sub-Saharan Africans, Middle Eastern, or Nordic? Yes, some people have argued that the Egyptians came from the same place as the Vikings, but more on that in a sec. For decades, Egyptologists and scholars have been throwing down over this issue, while certain groups have even tried to claim that King Tut was a Viking. People have cited Egyptian artwork, statues, descriptions, and texts, but no one could ever agree. One of the biggest roadblocks to solving the mystery has been DNA technology. Scientists believe it was impossible to extract usable DNA from Egyptian mummies. Between the scorching desert heat, tomb humidity, and the ancient Egyptians' extremely extra embalming techniques, researchers thought any remaining genetic material was toast. But we're in the future now, and nothing is impossible. Using cutting-edge techniques, a team of international researchers cracked the code and successfully sequenced mummy DNA. What they found is that the ancient Egyptians were most closely related to Near Eastern peoples, especially from the Levant, meaning Turkey, Iraq, Israel, Jordan, Syria, and Lebanon. Cleopatra herself was Macedonian Greek, belonging to the Ptolemaic dynasty, which was founded by Ptolemy I Soter, a general of Alexander the Great. If you're wondering why this is such a big deal, it has to do with where Egypt is. On the tip of Africa, a mere hike away from Israel, Egypt is technically part of Africa. But the Egyptian people have never really identified as Africans. Science confirming their DNA comes from the Levant shows the Egyptians have more genetically in common with people in Turkey than in Nigeria. Interestingly, the study found that modern Egyptians share about 8% of their genome with Central Africans, much more than their ancient counterparts. Researchers think Egyptians began mingling with sub-Saharan Africans about 1,500 years ago due to trade, migration, and the trans-Saharan slave trade. There's one other thing to take into consideration. Over the centuries, the land of the pharaohs got conquered more times than your little cousin playing Call of Duty. Alexander the Great, the Greeks, the Romans, the Arabs, everyone wanted a piece of the Nile pie. You would think the Egyptian population would have become a mixed bag, but it didn't. Despite all these invasions, genetic analysis by the Max Planck Institute shows that the DNA of Egyptians remained relatively stable for over 1,300 years. Being ruled by a foreign power didn't give the Egyptian genes a makeover. Johann Krauss extracted DNA from 90 mummies to get these results. He and his team focused on bones and teeth, since those hold up better over time, and ran the samples through high-tech sequencing techniques that sound straight out of a sci-fi movie. The results showed clear genetic continuity in Egypt for centuries, with the oldest mummy dating to 1388 BC and the youngest from 426 AD. That is a huge time span, yet the DNA remained pretty consistent. The takeaway here is that ancient Egypt was a cosmopolitan empire with strong ties to the Near East. Thanks to advancements in genetic research, scientists are getting closer to painting a full picture of who these legendary people really were. The genes show they weren't exactly Africans, and they definitely weren't Nordic. Thanks for watching! Be sure to stay tuned for extra content you might have missed. The Dark Sarcophagus. In 2018, archaeologists in Alexandria unearthed a massive black sarcophagus, the largest ever found within the city. Naturally, rumors spread like wildfire, with one speculating that the missing remains of Alexander the Great had been found, and another claiming that the box contained a curse that would be unleashed if it were opened. When scientists opened the 8.5-foot by 5-foot sarcophagus, they found 3 skeletons immersed in a putrid, red-colored liquid sewage, which had seeped into the box at some point. 2 of the skeletons belonged to men, and the other was a woman. They were placed into the tomb at different times, one stacked atop another, and one of the men's skulls contained a hole, indicating that he had survived brain surgery earlier in his life. The remains date back to sometime between 332 BC and 30 BC during the Greek-ruled Ptolemaic dynasty, or from 30 BC to 642 AD, when Rome ruled Egypt. Researchers are unsure who these individuals were or why they were buried in such an unusual fashion, as it was not customary to lay someone to rest in such a large sarcophagus. They plan to continue their research, including through DNA testing and CT scans, in hopes of gleaning more information about the mysterious trio. Pink Pharaoh Statue. Late last year, archaeologists discovered a pink granite statue of the pharaoh Ramses II along with a miniature limestone Sphinx. Egypt's Ministry of Antiquities announced that the pink statue is one of the rarest archaeological discoveries ever. That's big words coming from Egypt. Both artifacts were found near the Giza pyramids west of Cairo, while excavating a man's yard after he was arrested for carrying out illegal treasure hunts. The 3.5-foot tall, 1.8-foot wide statue is the first known statue of its type made from granite that has been found. It contains a hieroglyphic on the back meaning strong bull, which is a testament to the ruler's strength and vitality. Mustafa Waziri, Secretary General of the Supreme Council of Antiquities, said in a statement, further explaining that the statue was intended to provide a resting place for the Ka, the life force or spirit of the person after death. Also known as Ramses the Great, Ramses II ruled Egypt from 1279 BC to 1213 BC during Egypt's 19th dynasty. He vastly expanded Egypt's empire throughout his 60-year reign, and is also commonly regarded as the pharaoh in the biblical Exodus story. The long-lived pharaoh, who lived to be around 90 years old, also made his mark in history by building more monuments and having more children than any other pharaoh. Khufu Ship. There are lots of things buried with pharaohs, but this one was kind of unexpected. In 1954, archaeologist Kamal El-Malak discovered a dismantled ship buried inside the pharaoh Khufu's funeral pyramid, the Great Pyramid of Giza. The materials included ropes, cedarwood planks, and other parts necessary for building a barge. At the time, researchers knew next to nothing about how the ancient Egyptians built their ships, forcing restoration experts to figure it out on their own over a period of more than a decade. The finished product, which was put together without using a single nail, is a 144-foot-long, 19.6-foot-wide barge assembled from 1,224 parts. The 4,600-year-old vessel is so well constructed and remarkably preserved, experts claimed it would still function today if it set sail on the Nile River. Historians speculate that the boat was placed in the tomb for Khufu to sail across the heavens with the sun god Ra after his passing, as it was customary for pharaohs to be buried with items to use in the afterlife. But over 65 years after the vessel's discovery, its original purpose remains unclear. It bears signs of being used before it was buried, suggesting that the ship was possibly used to transport Khufu's remains from the ancient capital of Memphis to their ultimate resting place. Or maybe the pharaoh traveled in it while he was still alive. Other researchers believe that this ship may also hold the key to how the pyramids were built. Perhaps Khufu's barge carried the 2 to 3 ton stone blocks that were used for building the Great Pyramids. On open water, it could easily carry this kind of weight, and its asymmetric design could be used as a sort of lever to dip in and out of the water. In 2011, reconstruction began on another disassembled ship that was found inside the same pyramid. The Silver Pharaoh. Susens I, nicknamed the Silver Pharaoh, was buried in a royal tomb that supersedes almost all others in value, including King Tut, but you've probably never even heard of him. French archaeologist Pierre Montan unexpectedly discovered the lavish tomb in 1939 in northern Egypt. Inside was Susens' silver sarcophagus, the only one ever discovered, making it one of the most unique and expensive Egyptian artifacts, and baffling researchers who wondered why he received such grand treatment, even compared to other pharaohs. Silver was not readily available in ancient Egypt. It had to be imported, making it more valuable than gold. The silver sarcophagus, along with other artifacts of superior craftsmanship that were found in Susens' tomb, reflect his immense wealth and his power to command highly valuable resources and manpower. Susens ruled from Tanis during the 10th century BC, Egypt's 21st dynasty, a period of instability marked by conflicting leadership that divided the kingdom into Upper and Lower Egypt. As a result, the pharaoh's power was limited to the geographical confines of Lower Egypt. His reign was remarkably long, lasting somewhere from 41 to 51 years. Montan and his colleagues did not expect to find any spectacular artifacts from the period given the kingdom's weakened status. One theory suggests that the great deal of wealth Susem's likely accumulated during his lengthy reign may have footed the bill for his uniquely extravagant burial, even while the kingdom was in a period of decline. As the world braced itself amid growing tensions that would soon culminate into the onset of World War II, few people were concerned with much else, and Montan's discovery attracted little attention. To this day, it remains largely overlooked. Petite sarcophagus. Back in 2010, archaeologists working in Egypt's Bahariya oasis uncovered an unusually small sarcophagus depicting a wide-eyed woman wearing a tunic within a newly discovered tomb complex that they were excavating. The 1-meter-tall carved plaster sarcophagus constitutes the first Roman-style mummy ever found in the region, with the cemetery dating back to the Greco-Roman era around 2,000 years ago. Altogether, there were 14 tombs, but the petite artifact was the only sarcophagus of its type found at the site. The woman's eyes contain colored stones, giving the sarcophagus the appearance of being awake, and she is adorned with a headscarf, bracelet, shoes, and a beaded necklace. At first, scientists thought they had stumbled upon a child's burial, considering the coffin's small size, but its painstakingly carved features indicated that the remains inside belonged to an adult, probably a wealthy and influential citizen. Mahmoud Afifi, director of Cairo and Giza Antiquities for Egypt's Supreme Council of Antiquities, told National Geographic, "When I saw it for the first time, I thought it was a dwarf. Maybe she was a small girl. But even now, we don't know." Serapeum of Saqqara. The Serapeum of Saqqara is a vast underground necropolis located south of Cairo, and it has been steeped in mystery since its discovery. This place contains 24 giant sarcophagi, much too large for humans. The theory is that this necropolis was actually a burial place for sacred Apis bulls, that the ancient Egyptians considered the reincarnation of the deity Ptah. It contains massive tomb-filled galleries filled with unusually large sarcophagi, and that are interconnected via 0.75 miles of winding tunnels. This subterranean burial complex dates back to around 1400 BC, with the oldest tombs dating back to the reign of Amenhotep III. Perhaps the most famous feature of the Serapeum is the Great Vault, a sandstone passage with 24 chambers containing unusually large sarcophagi, each carved from a single block of black Aswan granite and weighing between 77 and 110 tons. Some of the sarcophagi bear inscriptions of hieroglyphics and bulls. French Egyptologist Auguste Mariette rediscovered the Serapeum at Saqqara in 1850. He only found one undisturbed burial, while the rest were empty and appeared to be looted. Mariette's excavation notes were lost, further obscuring researchers' understanding of the temple and its contents. There are many questions about the Serapeum and its large, black, and heavy sarcophagi. They are much larger than what was necessary to fit the remains of a bull. And why were they made of granite and not limestone, which was much more common? A new theory is that these large sarcophagi weren't made to honor bulls at all, and were instead made to ferment things. The lids are so heavy they would be practically hermetically sealed. Since granite is not porous, the gas would not seep through, keeping the ingredients inside to do their thing. Scientist Konstantin Borisov has posed another theory that the giant sarcophagi were used to generate electric charges with pressure built inside by CO2 gas. This phenomena would have lit the sky above Saqqara. What do you think? Did the ancient Egyptians have the ability to create this phenomenon? Let me know in the comments below. Fayum mummy portraits. Portraits are conspicuously absent from ancient Egypt's historical record, so when British archaeologist W.M. Flinders Petrie discovered 150 detailed paintings buried with mummies, it was certainly surprising. He found them while excavating a 1st century BC Roman-era cemetery in the Fayum Oasis region. Excavated between 1887 and 89, the portraits are painted on wood panels and display eerily lifelike qualities. They also demonstrate how Egyptian, Roman, and Greek customs became blended, leaving experts puzzled for decades about how to classify them while they sat, barely steadied in an academic limbo of sorts. Following Cleopatra's death and the end of the Ptolemaic dynasty, Rome took over Egypt, which had been under Greek rule for nearly 3 centuries. Fayum's population became increasingly multicultural as the region prospered, resulting in a hybrid culture containing elements of Greek, Roman, and Egyptian practices. The mummy portraits, which are done in naturalistic Greek and Roman painting styles, often with Egyptian pigments, feature a mix of fashion and hairstyles from all three ancient cultures. There are numerous mysteries surrounding the paintings, especially since only a few are matched to their mummy, leaving most portraits unidentified. It's also unknown whether the artwork was created during someone's lifetime or after they died, if the portraits accurately resemble their deceased counterpart, if they were created in designated studios, and if artists worked together on them. In 2013, Getty Museum conservator Marie Svoboda started Ancient Panel Paintings Examination, Analysis, and Research, APPEAR, which seeks to compile a database of the little-studied mummy portraits scattered throughout the world. This is helping researchers develop a better understanding of their history by studying patterns related to the materials, painting styles, and other aspects of the artwork. So far, they've uncovered evidence that the paintings were created in studios with multiple artists often working on the same painting, just like in Europe. They were also created using imported materials, reflecting Egypt's expansive trade network. By analyzing paintings that can be traced to their mummies, researchers determined that the individuals passed away at around the same age they're depicted as in their portraits, indicating that the paintings were created at the time of death. But a lot of unanswered questions remain, and as the database grows, each promising lead generates even more curiosity amongst Svoboda and her colleagues. High Priest Tomb. When an Egyptian high priest named Watier died at Saqqara 4,400 years ago, he was buried with utmost care and respect inside a lavish tomb that remained undiscovered and untouched until late 2018, when archaeologists encountered the burial's sealed doors and carefully worked their way inside. Unlike anything else discovered in several decades, the vibrantly decorated tomb, which sits 16 feet underground, is remarkably well preserved. This burial is one of a kind in the last decade, said Mustafa Waziri, the Secretary General of the Supreme Council of Antiquities, at a press conference. The color is almost intact, even though the tomb is almost 4,400 years old. It contains a rectangular gallery measuring 33 feet long and 10 feet wide and roughly 10 feet tall, with artwork like painted reliefs, carvings, and sculptures within depicting Watier with his wife and family, and various everyday scenes like hunting, sailing, wine and pottery making, musical performances, and furniture building. There are also dozens of statues of Watier, the number and variety of which is unusual, according to Egyptologist Aidan Dodson, who spoke with National Geographic about the discovery. Dodson said, "What we have is a rock-cut tomb chapel, and what has been revealed so far is the public part of the complex where family, friends, and priests could come and leave offerings for the dead. There are 5 other shafts inside Watier's tomb. One was empty, while others were sealed and had not yet been explored when news broke of the discovery. Archaeologists are continuing with their investigation in hopes of finding the remains of the tomb's owner, as well as other valuable grave goods. Who knows what else they might find?" Watier served under King Nefertiti, who ruled during the Old Kingdom's 5th dynasty, which lasted from 2500 to 2350 BC. Inscribed within the priest's tomb are his name and various titles, including Royal Purification Priest, Royal Supervisor, and Inspector of the Sacred Boat. Valley of the Golden Mummies. In 1996, a donkey stumbled while walking along a road in Egypt's Bahariya oasis, and its leg fell into a hole. Turns out it had fallen into one of many multi-chambered tombs comprising what came to be called the Valley of the Mummies, a 2,000-year-old cemetery 230 miles southwest of Cairo. Dating back to Roman-era Egypt, the 2-square-mile necropolis contained at least 250 mummies, which are estimated to be over 2,000 years old and date as far back as 232 BC. Experts believe there may be more, perhaps several thousand. The well-preserved mummies were adorned and buried in various styles, including elaborate gilded masks and waistcoats depicting different deities, wrapped in simple cartonnage or linen, and laid to rest in pottery coffins. They contained elements of both Egyptian and Roman cultures. For example, the mummies were preserved in a traditionally Egyptian style, but their hairstyles and other adornments were largely Roman. Approximately 30,000 people lived in Bahariya during its heyday, according to Egyptologist Dr. Zahi Hawass, who participated in the exploration of the site, now known as the Valley of the Golden Mummies, which would have possibly never been discovered if a donkey hadn't literally stumbled into it. Thanks for watching! Which discovery was your favorite? Let me know in the comments below, and remember to subscribe if you haven't already. See you soon! Bye!